Welcome back to the Piping Pastor, Theology Talks. Today we'll be getting into the discussion I mentioned about defending the Pharisees. Well, I am in the outdoor arena today. My middle child is having a ride this afternoon. So I'm here in the at the farm in Gettysburg, not my farm. And it's really a lovely day. It's overcast, but not too terribly cold. A bit windy, but not over the top. So rather a lovely day to be outdoor with a pipe. Enjoying some coffee here from Bantam Roasters in Gettysburg. And in the Peterson Bent Dublin today, I have some bag end from the Country Squire. Now, it's not called bag end any longer, of course, but when I purchased this, it still was. So, there's no copyright on my videos. Well, I mentioned about, in my video on toxic masculinity, Caiaphas. And I mentioned that he was an example of outward strength and inward weakness. And there are many examples of Pharisees in the New Testament where they're being taken to task quite harshly. And in many cases, it's well deserved, of course. But I think oftentimes the Pharisees kind of get a bad rap. We kind of chunk them all together as these horrible, legalistic, praying for show kind of people who are taking advantage of the Jewish population. Of course, taken to its extreme, it labels, everyone in the Jewish community that way, oftentimes. But in point of fact, there is a good reason the Pharisees acted in the ways that they did. Sorry, it's a new microphone, so I'm going to keep checking there, I suppose. Because you have to understand what position they were in the first century. Okay, first of all, Judaism is a rabbinic tradition. That is to say, it follows not necessarily a set of scriptures as the guiding light, but rather the rabbi's interpretation of them. So you have a lot of Jewish scholars, Shemuel and so forth, historically, the writers of the Talmud, who offer interpretations of the scriptures, the Hebrew Bible, and that's typically what people follow. In large part, what these rabbis had done is taken the law, the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Bible, or the Pentateuch. You got the Pentateuch, the Torah. I'm grasping now. In any case, but the Torah, they took the Torah and essentially were like, okay, these are the laws, but as you can see if you read through the book of Judges, people had a really difficult time adhering to these laws. The Jewish people over and over and over again would break the laws, and retribution would come from God and so forth. So what the rabbis did, in effect, was build a fence around the laws. Like if we make these rules out here, then nobody can get past it. And if someone does happen to get past them, they'll get stopped by the next fence, so nobody will even approach breaking of the actual law. So you have the tradition of the rabbinic leaders of the Pharisees at the time of really trying to keep people in line, because if one person broke the law, a lot of people got punished. You can see that over and over again in the Old Testament as well. One person would break the law and the entire community would suffer. So to prevent that, they built these laws around it. Now, in the building of those laws and so forth, they kind of lost track of what the The point was they lost the forest for the trees because the law was meant to be a form of worship to the Lord, and they got really focused on just not breaking the laws, not breaking the rules. So they kind of lost the point of it, but that's the impetus from behind it, right? Best of intentions. Well, that's the backdrop, and then you look at the political situation in the first century, in the time of Jesus. This is after years of a bunch of political infighting among the Jewish elites. The Romans were actually invited into Israel by Jewish leaders who were attempting to establish their political authority. And of course, we're talking about Herod at this time, um, desperate to cling to power, and as such invites the Romans in as like peacekeepers essentially. So it'd be kind of like a country today inviting the UN peacekeepers to maintain order in their own country, but then the UN peacekeepers deciding, you know what, we'll just take over and run things. We leave a puppet government kind of in control, but for the most part, this is going to be one of our areas. If we're going to be there, we're going to be there. That's essentially what happened. So you have these rabbis who now are desperate to maintain Jewish culture, maintain Jewish identity, maintain adherence to the laws, and make sure that the people don't go astray and cause further, calamity. So in many cases, now in some cases, sure, you're going to have some corrupt, Jewish officials and rabbis and so forth, but for the most part, they were attempting to maintain their Jewish identity, to protect Jewish culture, and to keep people from violating the tenets of the law. That's why they held so fast to it. Um, the issue is, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. As I said, they forgot the central focus of what the law was meant to be, and that is worship of the Lord. Following the law was a way to worship God. And they kind of lost sight of that, and they just got into the legalism of it out of a desperate need to protect themselves, their community, and their culture. So the lesson in that, I'll let you take the lesson however you see fit, but there's some good teaching in there. But, well, I think I am going to turn my attention back to my pipe, my lovely coffee, and hopefully we'll see my daughter wrapping up here pretty shortly. Um, I will continue in the theology series if there's any further questions about this, because I know there's a great deal of interest in this right now, given the current situation in Israel. And I recently helped a person with an article they were writing regarding the history of the conflict in Israel and how indeed far back that goes. We're talking thousands of years, not just since the end of World War II. But if there's questions, I'd be happy to indulge them in an apolitical way, of course. I'll deal with the history and the theology. I'll leave the political wrangling to the live streams. In any case, hope you have a lovely week. As always, happy reading.